Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with something I haven't done in quite a long time, and that is a YouTube subscribers contest. This one happens to be for the comic book community. This is for Jerno's Comics and Pop Culture. Thanks, Chris. But what's really weird is I haven't done this in like a year. 2019, I entered several of them, and I won like 2 or 3. And it was like almost back to back to back. I was like, you know what? My luck's running wild. I'm going to stop here and let people have a chance to win, you know. And plus, I don't want to have a channel solely dedicated to, you know, contest entries. That's not really what I am. But, you know, I mostly do that just for support of the channels. The prizes don't really, it's not the reason I do those things. So I guess I should do more for support reasons, but whatever, getting off subject. But anyway, yeah, this one's for Chris over at Jerno's Comics and Pop Culture. It's funny, Chris and I kind of go way back as far as the YouTube community goes. Like, I think the very first or second, no, it might have been the second subscribers contest that I ever entered was his.
I'm with Starfleet. We don't lie.
And I did a really long one where I talked about, I think, my favorite comic book characters, and then I showed some woodworking that I was doing as like a hobby outside of comics, you know. It was like a 20-minute video. If I can find it, I'll try to post it down below in the comments, but suffice it to say, it was a, you know, for me, long-winded entry. There was some other good stuff happened with Chris. I'll say that toward the end, but let me go ahead and jump into what he's asking for now. So I'm going to have to do 8 things at this moment, and that'll put me in for the grand prize entry. So first off, wants me, number one, to show how I store my comics. So I went ahead and made a separate short little video highlighting this. Technically it's 2 videos, but I keep them short, don't worry, and I will play them now. So, how I keep my comics? Well, that's an interesting question. This is pretty low-tech stuff, but right now, I don't have any long boxes, and due to some of the gross pricing of them, I have not bought any. I guess I need to break down and buy a few, but right now, in my office, I have piles upon piles of comics kind of sitting around, stuff I plan on doing stuff with in the future, or sometimes, like, if I'm streaming whatever, I want a visual aid, I'll grab it, or I pick my comic cover of the week from here. I mean, these are just some. I have more in the basement. I'll show you those here in a bit, but yeah, I don't really have a good organization right now for them. I used to have everything nice, marked, and clean, but you know how it is. Oh, I guess I got a Conan thing going on, but, you know, just tons of stuff like this, you know, just hanging around. But yeah, so right now, even got one up here. Just piles of them everywhere, right? So I'll show you the other ones here in a second. Alright, so I'm down in the movie room / basement area, and here's the other way I keep a lot of the comics that I have left. Moving boxes. Just standing at Home Depot moving boxes. I got a couple of these that are filled up with the remaining comics that I have. And so yeah, they're just kind of just organizedly put in here. Sorry about the shine there. There's a good Dark Horse book. That could be a cover of the week selection right there. It's a beaut. But yeah, so that's the other, like, very unorganized way I keep things. Like I said, I need to go buy some long boxes, but hopefully that meets one criteria for you. It's temporary, but it works for me. Alright, so the second question is, who is your fave on-screen portrayal of a comic book character, and explain why? For this one, I had to do some thinking, and I decided on the Hulk in the 2003 Incredible Hulk movie by Ang Lee. Why do I like this one so much? I didn't like the movie. I'll tell you right now. That's just, I'm not a fan of it, other than watching some of the highlights with Hulk in it. Everything else I don't care about. I know a lot of work went into it to try to give it nuance and all that, and a really unique, distinctive look, which he did do well. It just, I found the rest of it kind of tedious. I didn't have Hulk in it. But anyway, as for the character himself, say what you will about how he looked visually and all that, I think it was really, really excellent for the time period. That portrayal was the Hulk. That's the only real Hulk I've seen. This is like Savage Hulk days, but it plays more on the Hulk of the childlike intelligence, really young child intelligence. He doesn't understand why people keep attacking him. They just keep doing, so he lashes out when he gets attacked. But he doesn't go out and start attacking people randomly. I guess the worst offender is when he tears apart the lab when he first changes or whatever. I mean, I don't know. It's a kid growing into his new body. You know what I mean? But I mean, just the power set he had, it all just fit. They really focused on the jumps, him running and things like that. He had some pretty epic feats of strength. He grew as he got angrier, which was kind of originally how he was written. And like his healing regeneration was almost instant. In fact, in one instance when he fights the mutant dogs or whatever, the gamma dogs, he not only regenerates after they bite him, he actually flexes his trap and it breaks the dog's jaw. It's pretty hard. It's easy to miss while you're watching that one because of all the ooh ah what's going on. But it was just such a cool little power set for him. And he was also a pitiable character because of the way he made his face. He's just a big kid who people keep beating on. And he doesn't know why. But yeah, so that's probably my favorite interpretation of a comic book character in the movies. There were some other runners-up. Tom Jane did a pretty good job when he had more gravity to him as a Punisher. But most of the other ones I don't find all that compelling outside of looks. So. Third question he wants done is, what comic book series first brought me into the hobby and how old was I? Well, I want to guess that's another two-parter. I can do anything short, can I? The very first comic I got outside of like He-Man and G.I. Joe comics, that the little ones used to come with the toys, I think it was, not so much G.I. Joe, but the He-Man ones, was this one, West Coast Avengers number 16. I got this in like a gigantic plastic Easter egg, all kinds of like loot in it. It was... I don't even remember how old I was, probably 10, maybe, let's see, this is 86, so I don't know if I got this right when it came out, though, so I was either 10 or 11 years old when I got it, but this is still the same copy, I have it, and it's total reader copy, the cover's not attached or nothing, but I read the crap out of it, but I don't remember ever buying another comic book after that for quite a while. Now, what I can say really got me into it around the age of 12 was these two comics, because I got them both at the same time, and this is Punisher War Journals number 2, and number 3. I bought these from a friend of mine who was already collecting comics at that time. He let me borrow them just to read them. We always read our comics back then. And I had to have them. So I bought them from him. I think I saved up lunch money or something because I didn't have allowance or nothing like that. So I think I paid him off in lunch money or whatever, if he even charged me. I know I paid something for him, but...
It's very becoming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so these are the ones, and ever since then, I was a huge mark for comics, and I would just collect, and I was also a huge sports card collector back then, so it was kind of like dueling hobbies, right? So it was a little bit difficult sometimes. I probably still spent more on sports cards, but it's a pretty close call. I went pretty crazy with comics for a couple of years. So that's kind of the series that got me first started, was Punisher War Journal, Punisher in general. So that leads me into question 4, is who is my favorite superhero of all time, and that is the Punisher. Bar none, easily my favorite of all time. It's not even close. I've always had an affinity for his character. For one, I was a little more bloodthirsty, I guess, in my younger days, and his character made sense to me. It's like he fought the street-level villains and bad guys, and people that other heroes didn't bother with, outside of maybe Spider-Man sometimes, and like Cloak and Dagger, Daredevil. Those guys kind of went after the low rungs, but Punisher went even lower. I mean, other than Cloak and Dagger, who went after like drug dealers specifically or whatever, Punisher went after the dregs of the criminal society and the ones that usually most affect people in their surroundings. Captain America didn't go out on the streets cleaning up too often, and it certainly was beneath Thor and all them. He handled the cosmic threats, the big boys, but Punisher was human. He had human motivations. His entire family was butchered in front of him. He lived. He's a war vet. He came back from an unpopular war, wasn't treated well. Most of the vets back then weren't. And so you could see the smoldering rage within this guy, and he's just a Roman candle. He's destined to burn hot, shoot across the sky, and burn out at an early age. Now, of course, him being a comic book character, he's not going to burn out anytime soon. But that's the idea. Every fight he was in could have been his last. That's why it gets hard for me to get invested in characters like the Hulk and Superman and Thor, all these guys. They're not going to die. There's no danger to these guys. They can always res themselves almost for the most part, especially like Hulk and all them. They can regen their entire substance, the whole body from the cellular level, like within 14 minutes. Where's the challenge there? I mean, yeah, he might get beaten up, but he's always going to come back. And Frank didn't have any of that going for him. He was up against cutthroats and killers himself, and a lot of times he would be fighting outside of his weight class, and he still would charge in there and do what was best for those around him. He had a code he lived by, and yes, he was an anti-hero, and he was very Judge Dredd, pre-Judge Dredd, he was Judge, Jury, Executioner. Whether that's a good thing, probably not, but I mean, it's comic books, he has to suspend disbelief a little bit. So I always loved him as a superhero. He's my favorite. I always liked the more human characters like Batman, Captain America, people like that. Moon Knight was always really cool. Night Thrasher, people who they were playing around in a world of metahumans, and they're just regular Joes. And but Frank had the sense enough to, like I said, stay within his own realm when he possibly could. Plus, he was really antagonistic with Wolverine, which I loved. Yes. Anyone who gets down on Wolverine is okay in my book. So that leads into question 5. Who is my favorite supervillain of all time, and why? Well, I'm going to have to say probably Juggernaut. And I know that I said like the human characters a little more often. If I'm just going for like standard villains, I probably like Crossbones the best, because once again, he's just a mean badass who is fighting for basically hire. And he's just funny. I like most of the dialogue he has, and he gets by all right for, just being basically a big, tough guy. I mean, he's fought Cap to a standstill many times, and he doesn't even have super soldier serum. So Brock Rumlow is pretty cool. But I say overall, Juggernaut's my favorite, and I'll tell you why. It's, for one thing, he's an interesting character. He's actually an avatar of, a cosmic level being, a magical being, Sidorak, due to the gem of Sidorak, Crimson Gem of Sidorak. So it gives him this huge power set, but basically I almost think of him as like a remote control villain. It's just basically Sidorak's way of being on this earth, and it gives him bragging rights with the old demons and gods or whatever. But I just like his power set, and it's interesting. Can't be stopped once moving. I mean, that makes sense as far as like the name Juggernaut or whatever, but I know he's super strong. He has physical, basically, he's invulnerable, basically, to physical harm. Magical attacks don't really do too much to him. He's used to be shown as weak to psychic attacks. I'm not sure if he still is. That's why he wore the helmet. The only reason he wore the helmet, just to shield himself, because basically, if you think about it, Charles Xavier, his stepbrother, would be the ultimate foil for him, because he could just telepathically have him stop whenever he wanted to, if Charles was around and deigned it worth his time to do so. But what I really liked about Juggernaut, too, is, well, there's a couple of different facets. First off, he was basically an Omega-level threat to the Earth, yet he was a small-time hood at heart. Like, him and Black Tom would get together, and they would, rob banks and do jobs for pay. I don't think he had too much interest in global domination. He never really had big plans like that, whether he was not smart enough. I know there was a storyline where he went to another dimension and took that dimension over or something, and Thor fought him and all, but it was, I don't know, he was just not the typical megalomaniac villain who wants to take over the world, like Pinky and the Brain or whatever. So I could really dig that about him, and it's interesting they gave a character with that much power that dynamic. And the other facet I like about him so much is that he could trade blows with the big boys in Marvel. He can fight the Hulks. He can fight the Thors. And if they keep true to his power set that was laid down from the early days, he should be able to basically mop the floor with those guys. Because, and I know in the New Warriors fight, or the first appearance of the New Warriors, I think was it Thor 411, 412, I think it is, he basically whips up on Thor. Now, Thor has some kind of sickness thing going on, but he takes everything that Thor can come throw at him, and he just shrugs it off, including the God Blast. He takes that full on chest, and all it does is move him back a few steps, and then all the ground crumbles beneath him, and it goes to another dimension or something. It's kind of a weird Due Machina, whatever. But so yeah, he can hang with the big boys, and the fact that he can, well, it's just cool, because most villains in MCU and DC, they can't. I mean, outside of like DC, I mean, yeah, you have like Sinestro and the Darkseids and all that, and those are real heavy hitters. But in Marvel, there's not a lot of the big bad guys who aren't cosmic that can do that. Not the more temporal, bad guys. Now, like the cosmic level threats and all that, that's different. But as far as the on-Earth bad guys. There wasn't a lot of real big, huge powerhouses that could go toe-to-toe with the marquee heroes. So I love that aspect about Juggernaut. So, okay, Marco, you're okay, my book. So, question 6 is, what is your favorite universe? It's either Marvel or Star Trek, probably. And I'd say for overall richness and depth, probably got to be Marvel. I mean, there's just so much going on. I know DC's got huge too, but I was always a Marvel guy, right? There's just so much history and so much going on in Marvel Comics. So many characters to get behind, so many teams. It's just, a lot of great villains. It's so tough, man. So many dimensions and multiple multiverses and cosmic level stuff. It's just a rich gumbo of good stuff there. I'm sure Game Up would say that too. Just gotta love it. Mutants, Supermen, Eternals, like I said, Celestials, all that kind of stuff. Even the one being above all and all. So just such a rich and long-lasting universe, even longer than Star Trek. So I'll have to go with Marvel as being my favorite universe as far as fiction goes. Question 7 was, what is my favorite MCU film, and then my least favorite, and then why? Well, let me go ahead and, await the pitchforks and torches a la Frankenstein. I'm not a big fan of the MCU or DCU movies.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
So uncivilized.
That's just about the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What? Whoa. No!
You're such an asshole.
This will not stand.
I have it! And let's slip the dogs of war.
Finish him!
I don't know, man. There's a lot about them I don't like. They change story for stories, for movie's sake. Then that's pretty standard. Like Lord of the Rings, they omitted a lot of stuff. They changed some things up. I can understand that for narrative. You kind of got to guide the audience, hold the audience's hand, because really, I guarantee like 95% of the viewers of the MCU don't know these characters outside the movies. They never read a comic book in their life. They don't care about, the history of these guys. So basically, everything they're seeing is the first time, so I can look past that, whatever. But, yeah, they're just not my cup of tea. Too much characters getting changed. Way too much humor in these movies. They have a formula. It's like 2 minutes of action or 2 minutes of drama, and then there's got to be a joke. You can almost time it. It's annoying to me, but whatever. That's what makes the most money, so I don't blame them for doing it. Just not really my thing. It is nice to see movies like, superhero movies realize now that technology is pretty much caught up, and it mostly looks pretty good. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of them. But so if I was pressed, I would guess to say my favorite would probably be Winter Soldier. I guess Captain America, the second one. Just because mostly I like the Bucky and all. I like the idea that the villain is a sympathetic villain. He's not really a bad guy, but he's made to do bad things, and he's kind of Cap's equal as far as fighting and power and all that goes. Maybe a little underneath him. So that one's pretty cool. It's got an overarching theme of Orwellian control, a la the Shield technology, whatever, and that's funny from Hollywood types talking about that, but whatever. It's story hypocrisy for another day. But yeah, so that's probably my favorite one. And I guess to say my least favorite has to be Thor Ragnarok. The reason that is it looks nice, and there's some interesting things going on, but they basically took 2 very serious storylines from the comics, Ragnarok from like Surtur days, and then Planet Hulk, smash them together in a universe that they weren't originally in the first place, and then made a comedy out of it. How do you take 2 of the more serious, storylines in the series, where, on one hand, Odin's killed by Surtur or whatever, and threatens the entire, basically, Asgardian realm, and, the idea of the Hulk being basically excommunicated off the Earth betrayed by his own friends, and then sent somewhere else to get rid of the problem, having to fight for survival and all that. And you make that a comedy? I don't get it. It's just, that movie was nothing but a freaking comedic adventure, and I didn't care for the tone. Once again, I'm sure it looked fine, and there was a little bit of growth potential there. for Thor, but it's not my cup of tea. I'm probably just an old crotchety guy, so
Much anger in him.
take what I say with a grain of salt, but just didn't care for that adaptation whatsoever. So we're getting down to the last one. So now wants me to name 3 YouTubers that we should all sub to. I'm going to go ahead and go with my Graders Notes co-hosts, just none other than Medarog, Comic Kid 84, and Mr. Miracle Comics. Those 3 guys are like pillars of the comic book community on YouTube, and I'll have some great content. Medarog, he is an encyclopedia of knowledge especially about oddball stuff, horror comics, that kind of thing, Silver Age and Bronze Age. He's just a font of knowledge, and from everything from writers, artists to inkers and all, he knows them. He lived it, he's breathed it since the 70s. He's maybe the longest time collector we have in the community. So, and he's just an all-around great guy. He's the one that does the contest roundups every week. He takes a lot of time out of his day, and he makes videos showing contests that all the creators put out there. So it's like a one-stop shop to see who's doing what. Great guy. Roger's a great guy. Recently, he just passed 1,000 subs, too, so big kudos on that. Comic Kid 84, Kenny over there, he's the best. He's the macho head, man. He's great. Does a great Randy Savage impression. Has a Mega Power Hour. Talks a lot of wrestling, which is cool. Talks a lot of comic books. Good artist. Just a capital fellow. Funny dude. And also hardworking man as far as his occupation. So many kudos to you, Kenny. And of course, Mr. Miracle Comics, the king of the unknown spec. A real wry and humorous guy. Usually a lot of fireworks between us on Graders Notes, because a lot of times we disagree on
Head wound? Canadian.
stuff. Sometimes we agree. Like last week, we did really close together, actually, on Machine Man that we dissected. But just funny guy, and his speculation makes a lot more sense to me. It doesn't revolve around just the movies, you know what I mean, to make things hot. So I think it's pretty cool. He goes in depth of why. Also an artist, and like I said, just a good dude. And YouTube is a better community because of guys like these. So yeah, if you're into comics and into YouTube, if you're not sub to these guys, watching this guy's content, you're really missing out. So yeah, so that's basically it. This got really long. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to be this long, but I want to do a good job for Chris, because like I said, we got a history, and I'll tell you another thing that I really dig about the guy. So after I did his contest, I didn't win or anything, but he'd been watching my video, right? And he asked me about some of my favorite artists and all that. I think that was one of the questions, favorite artists, and I know one of them I mentioned was Ron Lim, because I loved his work on his Cap run, right? So even though I didn't win, just out of the blue, Ron Lim was doing a signing over there in California, and he watched my video and listened, and he went down there and got this for me. He got Streets of Poison with 377. Yep. Signed by Mr. Lim there. Even got proof of life on the back of him signing my book. So, and he just sent it to me out of the blue. It was the coolest thing ever. And I'll be eternally grateful for that, because it's such a kind thing to do. And it's very indicative of how he runs his channel. He seems like a really caring and just, overall nice guy. So, yeah, I'm obligated to try to do a good job for him. So that ought to wrap things up. So if I missed anything, just let me know. I will try to amend it. But yeah, that's my my submission for his contest. So 1,500 subscribers, very big congratulations. I think I first started watching you around 300 subs or something like that. So you've done real well about growing your channel. And also know you're a family man and all that too, so I can really appreciate that. So yeah, man, keep on collecting, keep on making great content, and best of luck to all my fellow submitters. So anyway, that's way too much rambling for me, so thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, concerns, rants, just put it down there in the comments below. I will link his contest in the description below as well. And so make sure you get over there and enter it, because, like I said, Chris is just a capital fellow. Anyway, until next time, this is Jerno, just loving his walk down memory lane, and loving Captain America 377, courtesy of Jerno's Comics and Pop Culture. Oh! Before I say out, also Chris does commissions, art commissions. He did a Doctor Who for my wife that I commissioned from him last year for her birthday, I think it was, and just amazing work. So I always get with him on that one too to see if he's still doing it. So Oh, I support your local artists. So, where was I again? Oh, yes, this is Genome out.